Hello and welcome to episode 237 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining on today's episode of the podcast. We got the wonderful Tyson Pease returning to the show.
Hey.
How's it going, Tyson?
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Of course.
Yes, Tyson, you are here to talk about Salmon Run. We are going to do maybe a little bit late, but some tips and tricks for new players or inexperienced Salmon Run players. And we're also going to talk about the gaming news for the week. We've got the Game Awards coming up soon. We've got a lot of video game, like film and TV adaptation news to talk about. And then TV shows disappearing from some video game platforms. And I think the thing I'm most excited to talk about are these scrapped WaPeach designs. We got a lot of stuff to go over.
Yeah.
But before we get into any of that, how are we doing? How are y'all doing?
Good. For anyone that doesn't know, Salmon Run is a mode in Splatoon 3, by the way, just in case anyone has never heard of it before and is very lost right now.
This is why we need you, David.
That you missed.
Every time we get into this discussion and we're using technical terms, you have to be like, what's a steelhead?
Well, no, I'm not going to ask that many fucking questions. We'll be here all
every second.
Yeah. No, but I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. It's been a chill week for the most part. I don't know. I saw Godzilla -1, which is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
I mean, it's like definitely one of in my top 5 of the year. It is amazing. Far and away the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. I really recommend everybody go see that. I think it's like leaving theaters at the end of this week. And this is one you're going to want to see on the big screen. It's incredible. I was like very moved by the film. It was beyond just being a big monster destroy city. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that was great. And then played a lot of games. The Binding of Isaac multiplayer beta came out this past weekend, and that's been kind of taking over my life. I'll get into that more at the end of the show. But yeah, no major complaints. What about you, Tyson? How are you doing?
I'm good. I feel like this time of year is just kind of crappy in general. The light is gone, especially I'm up in New Hampshire where it's like really gone. Mm-hmm. But it's, the season of knitted goods. So that's nice. And Big Run was this past weekend and that was a lot of fun. So yeah. And, I've got some good commission work underway, working for a solo game developer in particular of note. So yeah, it's good. Exciting
Whoever
times.
Could that be?
Yeah. It's a mystery. It's a mystery, these things.
How are you, Patrick? I know you're a unnamed indie game developer.
I'm doing all right. I actually just got sent some concept art from this artist I'm contracting with that's really great. So that improved my mood.
Oh my God, guys, fuck already.
No, but for real, it's been a fine week. I think I don't have a whole lot to report. I'm trying to think of anything interesting. I went to the arcade a bunch of times this weekend for multiple birthday party celebrations for kids, but I didn't really play much. I just sat there. But
you're arcading wrong. I can say that.
Yeah. I was
not how you're meant to do it.
I was funding children to play at one of them, so I
right.
That was enough expenditure. But
sure,
as we move on then to last week's episode, which was about wind. We did a whole episode about wind. That's right. We got in response tons of wind puns from folks over on the Discord and on YouTube. We'll get into some of those maybe, but on the Discord we also got into discussion of other elements in video games too. Earth, fire, etc., etc. Who knows? Maybe some of these are in your future, listener.
Yeah. I really want to. I'm going to say it right now. I want to do an episode called Lava. I think lava is weirdly everywhere in video games. I'm putting that up there so I don't forget.
We also now have a buff wind emoji on the Discord, thanks to Matthew. And we got some honorable mentions of various games, but a couple of them would include, Emma mentioned Animal Crossing and the wind blowing the balloons across. And then Hans mentioned blowdown effects in Xenoblade and how if Matt was still on the podcast, we probably would have heard about that.
Yeah, rest in peace.
And over on the YouTube, Dylan Musk said, "This is the kind of esoteric topic I'm here for. Premier Nintendo podcast and Premier Wind and Games podcast." We got a comment from AVK saying that they were having a tough day, but by the time they made it through our insane intro segment, they were laughing out loud. So that's nice. And then our friend Steve Irwin says, "Does passing gas count as wind?" We discussed almost talking about Wario and farting on the episode, but we didn't get that deep into it. And then Scary Fingers gave us another wind pun with Mace Windu. So yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I read that comment and I was like, "Why is he talking about Mace Windu right now?"
Any Star Wars game that features Mace Windu has Windu.
Read the name Wind in Windu. No, but that was a blast. I'm glad the Wind episode was popular. We really enjoyed doing that one. Makes us want to do a lot of the other like long talked about bit episodes that might actually turn into real episodes at some point in the future. So thanks everybody for the response to that. And
if there's anything on today's discussion that you hear and you want to, chime in on, then definitely send us a note, a DM on one of the platforms, or join the Discord and comment there. And also make sure you head to the YouTube and watch the video version and hit like and subscribe. And we're going to talk about the news and rumors and all that in video games for the week. First up is a bunch of video game adaptations into film and TV, like I mentioned. The Mario movie is out on Netflix. Has anybody watched it yet? Again?
On Netflix? No, I haven't. No, I've been watching real cinema. So like Godzilla minus one.
Like the best movie ever, Godzilla.
Honestly, go see it. Oh man, everybody keeps making fun of me.
It got watched in our house already.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. That seems like that probably would have.
Yeah, it did. And then the Fallout TV show, which is going to be on Amazon Prime in April of next year, got a trailer, a nice long trailer.
Yeah,
looks pretty good.
Yeah. I really enjoyed looking at this. I'm officially made me excited for the show. It seems like it's got a little bit of that sardonic Fallout humor in there. Looks like it's not taking itself too seriously, which would be an absolute death knell for that show, I think. I've already seen a lot of like Fallout 1 and 2 on PC fans being like, "Oh, this isn't dark." I'm just like, guys, it's fun. It's like, it's a 1950s, like it's just be happy it is getting made at all, and it looks like it has a big budget. What did you think about it, Patrick?
Yeah, I thought it looked interesting. I mean, I actually have never played a Fallout game, so I don't really know. Like, yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of it, I'm familiar with the trope and I've played Skyrim and stuff, so I kind of get the gist, but I thought the trailer looked really good, actually. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I expected it to be that good, to be honest.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Another adaptation's been Halo. They've gotten a second season, and that's coming in February of 2024. And that also got a trailer, which I have not watched. Anyone here watch this trailer yet?
I haven't watched the original series or this trailer. I'm looking at it right now as I'm like scrolling through it, and I guess it looks okay.
I heard it was better than the first season. I mean, we watched the first season in our house, but it didn't grip me. It was kind of just something we threw on when we were doing other stuff. So I didn't really pay close attention.
Yeah, I think it sounds like Halo deserved better, but I never gave the first season a shot. I do know, I think the whole first season is free on YouTube right now as a way of trying to get people onto Paramount Plus by the time season 2 comes out. So that's a good chance to give it a shot, right? So that's good.
So presumably both of those TV shows were filmed prior to all the strikes, and that's why they actually are dated. But a show that kind of got stuck in the middle of that was The Last of Us. And the news around this show is that they are actually going to start filming again now that the strikes are over sometime, and it's expected of February of next year. So probably a ways off from that season 2, right? For Last of Us 2025.
Yeah, I'd say 2025 is likely. I mean, I'm sure that they've been working on a lot of viz dev and a lot of, sets and all the CG work and all the stuff that they would have been doing anyway, and modeling and whatever. I'm sure that they were working on that a lot so that all those people didn't just like lose their jobs over that time, right? So I don't think it will be as long as everybody thinks, for it to come out. But yeah, I think any earlier than 2025 doesn't really seem possible. Can I just say also, feels like we're getting into the golden age of filmed video game adaptations. I mean, not that Halo is like a shining beacon on the hill of what to do with the video game IP, but it's like just seeing the Fallout trailer, and Last of Us was so critically acclaimed, and Mario made billions of dollars. Like, people are finally realizing that, like, oh, if you actually like treat these adaptations like seriously, the quality and the viewership will be there, and it can make a lot of money and do well for your services. So hopefully that's the lesson people take going forward, not just like pump out as many as possible, like Disney's been trying to do with superhero stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
and Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Good point. They did tease Sonic 3, which must be now filming as well.
Taking it seriously. Bringing in Shadow.
Exactly.
He's going to swear. He's going to say, damn.
Yeah. Can't wait for Michael Cera as Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh,
it's going to be really fantastic.
Well, later this week, on Thursday, is the Game Awards. I don't know that there's a whole lot for us to say right now, but next week we'll have a whole lot to report on that, I'm sure. Any last minute Game Awards talk or predictions before it happens?
I think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to sweep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's going to walk out with like 8 awards. And yeah. And I'm going to have some people over. So if you feel like coming over and watching the Game Awards, hit me up first. Don't just show up at my house, a random internet person that I'm talking to on a podcast.
Sega is supposed to have news, right?
Oh, I think that was teased.
I mean, I guess everybody's going to have something.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Live action Nights into Dreams show.
Yeah.
And then Grand Theft Auto 6 was set to have a trailer come out. I guess the day after or the day before this show comes out. It gets tricky. We're recording on Monday. It's supposed to come out Tuesday, but because somebody leaked it, Rockstar just went ahead and put out the trailer early. How about that? I guess that's one way of dealing with it, right?
Yeah. I can't tell if that's like giving too much power to the leaker or completely snubbing the leaker out of existence. But either way, I think it sucks for, this is not, at the end of the day, you don't want to be releasing, a the tweet announcing the date for this trailer had like the most likes on any tweet ever, I think. Like, so it was like everybody had plans to watch this trailer when it dropped tomorrow, right? And including the team. And, this had to have been a bit of a PR, you don't want to have to do this, right?
No.
All the poor games journalists about to go home at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. on a Monday night had to be like, oh, fuck, all right, let's do this at the end of the day, But,
also, listening to this trailer, I accidentally had the sound up here, and I'm just like, it fits fine, but I'm just kind of surprised to hear Tom Petty on this. I don't know if Tom Petty would have greenlit this when he was alive or not, but
yeah, I think he would have.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, like there was, GTA 5 had their whole soundtrack was done by Tangerine Dream. Like I think people like at this point, like GTA is it's like the biggest selling video game of all time, so you're gonna want your shit in there, and then B, they've shown themselves over the years to have like impeccable taste in music. Yeah. A quick aside. I went to I guess 10 years ago now. Whenever GTA 5 first released, I had the privilege of going to the like launch party in New York City whenever the game like came out. My buddy Alan was like in the soundtrack for GTA 5, so he got an invite, and then he brought me along as his plus one.
Nice.
And it was incredible. I'll never forget it. We like met all the actors from the games, and like we got to meet Tangerine Dream and like a lot of the musicians that were in it. We got to go to this like really tiny Flying Lotus concert at this like little club like for the release of the game. Yeah, it was a blast. But I mean, it's like you go there and you see it's like people, it's a fucking event, and I think that this trailer too, like we could talk about the trailer in a second, but it's like the Tom Petty and like the kind of like 80s vibe is, it's set here and it's set in Vice City. And GTA Vice City was set in the 80s. So it's like keeping that kind of like energy afloat, keeping like the neon washed streets and shit like that going. And I think that the vibe of this is definitely cemented by the music.
Wow, that's pretty cool that you got to do that. I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was fun. Alan, if you're listening, I'm expecting to go again this year. So hit me up.
I watched the trailer. I feel like it's not a lot of gameplay, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's just a vibes, right? It's a lot of like people without much clothes on and engaging in risky behavior is kind of how I, if you've asked me to summarize that trailer, I just watched it for the first time. So I'm still letting it wash over me. I've never been a huge GTA person. I played like 3, I think, and that was my time with it. And I am okay with moving on. I don't know. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not excited about the game. So it's not gonna
okay. I'm fucking pumped. I think this is like a big cultural moment whenever a new GTA comes out. And I think this one looks like it's playing with a lot of the like modern day, like social media stuff, which I think is an interesting angle. I mean, they touched on that a lot in GTA 5 as well, but like a whole decade has gone by of like social media toxicity and growth, so it's like it's gonna be interesting how they tackle that compared to the last game, which is very like Facebook focused, was kind of like the social media of that game, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think it looks awesome. You got the like Bonnie and Clyde, like female male protagonist, like crime couple angle seems really cool. And I think what's interesting too is like a lot of the stuff in this trailer is a lot of the stuff that was in like the gameplay leaks from like a leak, like a year ago.
right.
And it was almost seemed like I'd seen all this already, and that's because I saw the leaks. So I wonder like if there's going to be more, or if they put a lot of the stuff that's in this trailer around stuff that was in those leaks. I'm interested to see what they drop in future trailers. But anyway, we can stop talking about GTA 6 now. I'm just I'm fascinated by it, and I think it's going to be the biggest selling game of all time.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, it looks great, like visually and all that. So, but we'll move on to talk about Phil Spencer, who did an interview with Windows Central, somewhat because maybe he had to after after somebody else at Xbox said something earlier in the week about them wanting to get Game Pass on every screen possible, and that generated a lot of headlines. And so I think maybe he had to do some clarification because there are no current plans for it to be on Nintendo and such. But there were some interesting tidbits that came out of this relatively short interview. You should check it out if you're interested on Windows Central, aside from the fact that there are no plans to bring Game Pass from Switch. Came up kind of like that they spend over $1 billion a year on Game Pass, like in particular, like getting third-party games on the service. That's a staggeringly high number to me.
Wow.
And it makes you wonder how much money Game Pass makes a year. Are they building it and spending more than I don't know. That's just crazy. Like anytime numbers get in the billions, my head explodes.
Game Pass has a reported 25 million subscribers. If they're all paying 10, 15 bucks a month, that's a lot of fucking money they're making.
I'm doing the math.
Do the math live,
I'm doing it right now. How many million did you say?
25 million subscribers.
It doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. But anyway, it's money. It's a money amount of money. But I don't know, man. I don't really know what's going on with Microsoft. Microsoft is one of those. It's like Apple right now with like Apple TV and like Apple just spent $200 million on Killers of the Flower Moon, and they've got another big movie. I forget what it is. That's very expensive. That neither of those are. Napoleon is also an Apple funded movie. Neither of those movies are big. Neither of those are going to make 200 million at the box office, right? Not to turn this into super film heads, but this is just an example. It's like there are like tech companies like this, like your Apples, like your Microsofts, can afford to dump money into either quality or quantity over long periods of time if necessary in order to build up a platform, right? Microsoft right now is not doing great, with its Xbox division, no matter how you want to shake a stick at it. I mean, 25 million subscribers is amazing, right? But it's like, this year, the one big thing that they needed to be a huge critical hit was Starfield, and it didn't even get in the Game of the Year talk, really, which I don't think anybody expected before this, right? They thought that was going to be their big saving grace this year, and that was pretty much their only big game other than like Hi-Fi Rush and Forza, right? So it's like, and those are big games, but they're much more niche, right? So I think it's like they're really struggling right now. I think that putting Game Pass onto other platforms is not a terrible idea. I think Nintendo, Sony, if you really want to make this Game Pass and cloud, the kind of lack of hardware of the future, then start getting it going. I want to see it on Steam. I want to see it on good Steam Deck integration with Game Pass. That would keep me subscribed, but anyway, I'm just talking out of my ass.
Oh, no, that's good. And one of the other little things that got mentioned is, now that Microsoft owns ridiculous amounts of studios because of the, Activision Blizzard merger. He was asked about like dormant IP and how they're really looking at it and thinking about it and finding what the developers are excited about. But I also thought that two things he said. One, which was anything I tease, I'm teasing on purpose. Or whatever. It may take a while, but I'm actually doing that because he's always wearing like shirts and stuff at events of dormant IPs and stuff. So I guess we need to pay more attention to that. And then he said,
Phil is the kind of guy to do that. He'll put something on like the shelf in the background of one of his videos, and it means something. So.
Yeah, he confirmed it. It means something in this interview. And he also said that Banjo fans, I hear you. So I don't know if that is a tease or if that's just a like, shut up. One or the other or both. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff about, we talked about Game Pass, about like family plans and what they're thinking about and doing all that, but this isn't an Xbox podcast. So, we'll move on to talk about PlayStation because that's more aligned.
Look, Patrick, this is a gaming podcast.
That's okay? Right.
We can. We're not. We can talk about anything.
But this is some bad news that I don't know. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, David, if this is about the Warner Brothers thing or what. But like, apparently, Sony's put out a message to people who have purchased. I guess you could maybe buy individual like episodes of shows, is in particular from the Discovery Channel, that are now going to just go away. Like you won't be able to access them. So if you bought Discovery shows on your PlayStation through the PlayStation Store, that's very soon, right? Like they said it was happening at the end of this year, I want to say. It's just going to be gone. And that's a bit of a bummer.
Like ripped out of your library, right? Like, so it's not like, oh, they won't be available to purchase on the store anymore. It's like, no, even if you bought them, you can't watch them anymore in your library. Yeah, it's messed up. Now let's get real here. Literally, do you guys know anybody, who purchased video on their PlayStation, right? Through the PlayStation Network? I mean, I know maybe a couple of people who did back in the day. Or B, any Discovery Channel content like on PlayStation, right? Like who's getting Cake Boss episodes like on their PS4, right? Now I'm sure somebody did, But the problem here is the precedent. I don't know that this has ever really happened before, where they'll go into your library and remove like video content. Maybe it's happened before. This is the first time I'm really hearing about it, and I just don't. I mean, that it doesn't sit. That's not good. Right.
Yeah.
I think about that.
I think that it's one thing if like a whole ecosystem is shutting down, which also isn't good, but kind of makes sense to me, right? Like when you buy digital things through a platform, you're kind of reliant on that platform. And if that platform has to go away because they go bankrupt or because, it's antiquated and we've all moved on, I kind of get that. I'm not saying that's great, but like this feels wrong on a different level because it's like, PlayStation's still here. Discovery's still here.
Yeah. It's just the licensing deal, right?
They made a bad deal. And I think that like, I'm very pro digital. I think we need less plastic and less stuff, but like this doesn't help that case, you know, like and I also am like hey, I believe and accept that all digital purchases, I don't really own them, right? And I'm okay with that, like, but I do want to have a sense of a lifespan and you know what I mean, like and not
I don't know if it would be better. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah,
I don't know if it would be better if you could at least like download the episodes like off of your PlayStation. Like if that was a thing, like from now until the cutoff point, where like we're not able to like allow it to be in your library on this device. But if you move it off the device, you can access it that way. But I imagine that's not even an option in this case.
Yeah, it's not. And I mean, it's got a lot of people going back into the TOS that they signed, you know, when starting a new digital platform or whatever. And it's like, if you look in it, that's in the TOS that they can do this, right? So it's not like they're breaking any laws or anything. But I do think that as we're entering into this, especially into an all digital future where physical media is dying off, you know, except for very niche things, which you can't expect, I do think that there needs to be some regulation on this going forward. I think it's like, this is also coming on the heels. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but it's like, you know, Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney, you know, using tax write-offs as an excuse to remove completed work from streaming services. Like stuff like this, like needs to be looked into by regulators, because it's like, this is going to only continue getting worse, and they're going to keep saving as much money and pinching as many pennies at the expense of the consumer as they can until something is codified that stops this from being legal, right? And so I don't know exactly what the thing is, like the solution, I mean, but I'll tell you what, stuff like this just drives more and more people back to piracy, you know, like like doing stuff like this only makes more and more people want to steal your content, right? So it's like, don't, you know, get up in arms when all of a sudden BitTorrent websites are hosting all these shows that nobody's thought about for fucking decades, you know, and don't go after those people for taking the stuff when you've taken it away from them after they purchased it, you know? And so I think it's just, you know, there gets to be a point where piracy all of a sudden is like a morally just thing to do in order to keep media from becoming lost media over time, right? So that's kind of my only soapbox bit about this news story.
Yeah, it just kind of sucks.
Yep.
Up next, this is really fascinating to me. There were some designs that were revealed by one of the Mario, ex-Camelot Mario Tennis developers. I don't know how they got away with sharing this online and if they're in big trouble or what, because it just feels like they shouldn't have done this knowing Nintendo. But they've shown off a character that they were considering for what was it? Was it Mario? One of the Mario Tennis.
Yeah.
And then it spanned a couple of them, right? From what I read, but the point is, it's the Wah version, if you will, of Peach, and we got a nice T-pose, like 3D model of WaPeach or WaPeachy. I've heard of it referred
WaPeach.
to WaPeach. Yeah. Like, you know how Waluigi or Wario is to Mario or Luigi. This is the evil version of Peach, though she looks pretty nice. I'm not
she looks like a punk. She looks more like punk than she does like evil. Like, I don't know if Wario is evil. He's kind of just a capitalist.
That's evil. Yeah. No, but
yeah, no, it's like you said, it's like, you know, I think originally they wanted a WaPeach so that Peach could have a doubles partner in Mario Tennis for the N64. But Shigeru Miyamoto was like, I don't even want to see what a WaPeach would even look like. She'd be way too ugly. Nobody would want to play as her. Just bring back Daisy from Super Mario Land. And then that was kind of the resurgence of Daisy, right? Like, you know, she only really came back for Mario Tennis. And then they tried again with Mario Tennis for the GameCube, which is what these 3D renders are from, right? And still, Miyamoto was like, nah, right? And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you have the pictures up of her or had them up earlier, Patrick, but it's like, she's not ugly. She's in fact very cute and cool looking.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's a bit of a shame.
The internet is like going crazy, being like, holy shit, we lost out on this like adorable new Mario character that we could have had for a long time.
We could have had this instead of Daisy.
Well, no, I love Daisy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to slander the good name of the Princess of Sarasa Land. Okay, but no, I just think it's a really cool design, and it's an interesting little bit of Nintendo history. And I hope that Nintendo sees the response to this character and decides to bring her back in some capacity.
Yeah, it's just also like more female characters would have been great. So that's part of it too. One piece of news that just happened, so we're going to talk about it now, is they just announced or giving us our first look, I guess, at the Donkey Kong Country theme park expansion to Nintendo World. That's what they call it, right? Nintendo World?
Yeah, Super Nintendo World. Yeah.
So what's the deal with this?
Yeah, they show off a little bit of what you can expect it to look like in the Japanese park, at least, like the Donkey Kong Country section. And I mean, it's gorgeous. It looks just like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. So if you're like a fan of Donkey Kong, this is really exciting, like I am. And so I was like, hey, we got to get this in the news. But I'm really excited. I know this is eventually also coming to one of the US parks. I know they're building in Orlando, and there's obviously the one in California. But the one in Japan is coming in 2024. Hopefully around 2025, we'll get a Donkey Kong Country expansion in the parks here in the U.S.
You know that minecart ride's going to be great too.
Yeah, right. I think that's one thing that Super Nintendo World is kind of missing, is like good solid rides. The Mario Kart ride is like kind of more of a Haunted Mansion style, like rollabout. You know what I mean? I think that they could do something really cool with like a minecart ride. Yeah, so. Hopefully we see more about that in the coming months, especially if it's coming out in 2024. I'm sure we'll get tons of breakdowns, but just another reason for me to travel to Japan.
And then just to bring us into our main topic, there's kind of a lot that happened in Splatoon recently. The new season just started. There was a big update to Splatoon 3 that just dropped at the beginning of the month. New stages, new weapons, and Big Run, the Salmon Run event that happens once a season, along with a new King Salmonid, which we'll talk probably a little bit about now, maybe. I don't know if we'll get into it in the main topic, but Megalodontia. I know, Tyson, you're a big Splatoon player. That's why we have you on here. How are you feeling about all this new content in Splatoon?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, especially seeing that they've actually made some changes to how Salmon Run is structured. There are like new checkpoints in terms of your progression through the difficulties, which I was not expecting to see. The way it was set up until now, like if you wanted to like get to the highest, most achievement within a given rotation, you only had 40 hours while it was active. And so you'd really have to grind. And this gives you a little more leeway to like try again the next time a stage shows up, and you can get a little bit farther and get another checkpoint. So that's nice to see. And the new boss is great. A lot of fun. I feel like the other ones are kind of like goofy scary. And I mean, this one is goofy scary too, but it's like a little bit scarier just because it's so big and it just can like chomp you from anywhere on the stage.
Like Godzilla -1.
They added new specials into the game too, new special weapons and new special weapons into Salmon Run, which feels really weird. I'm still kind of getting used to that. And has anybody played like just the regular new stages? I haven't had a chance to yet.
No.
We've been too busy playing Salmon Run or not playing Splatoon.
Although I've heard one of the new specials is actually causing some problems for like more sensitive players. Like the sound of it and the way that it puts everything into grayscale, but it does it in a way that's like actually causing people like physical discomfort when it happens. Right. I've heard a couple like tournaments are considering banning any weapons that have it as a special. So hopefully Nintendo is, hearing that and is working on adjustments to make it that everyone can play the game again.
Is that
That sounds like something Nintendo would want to fix.
Is that the big screen one? The like wall
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
It's a weird one too, because like even if your team produced the screen, like you also can't see through it. So it's just like a big wall that kind of like gets in everyone's way. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, but it seems a little iffy right now.
Man, it's just great that the game is still getting supported and there's all that content. And now is a great time to jump into Salmon Run with all these changes. And with that, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to give some tips and tricks for hopping into Salmon Run in Splatoon 3. We are back, and this week we are talking about Salmon Run in Splatoon 3, giving some tips and tricks for new players or people who play other modes in Splatoon 3 but are interested in getting better at Salmon Run, with the most recent update making some small changes to Salmon Run. This felt like a great week for us to do this topic that I've been wanting to do for a while and been wanting to have Tyson on for. So I think what the plan is to just kind of give some high level. I think Tyson and I could talk about this for hours, but we're going to try to keep it pretty short and just focus on sort of higher level tips and suggestions, and then maybe tackle a handful of the things that I think new players have trouble with. Some of the modes, specific modes. We're going to skip a lot of the modes and a lot of the stages, but kind of focus on some of the tougher ones that get people frustrated, I think, as well So that's the plan.
If the people love this episode, you guys will come back for a deep dive.
Yeah, we could do a special deep dive sometime with the rest of it, maybe. But I think Tyson, please interrupt and take over at any point. But I feel like the one highest level tip that I always think about when I'm playing this is and this is kind of a weird thing to say, but it's kind of like play your role in this mode. And I know you might be like, well, what is my role? I don't understand. I think that's somewhat playing your weapon, which is also something I think about a lot. Like, I think when you're Salmon Run can teach you to play all these other weapons that maybe you haven't played in Splatoon 3, because you got like, I love my arrow spray, or I love my, whatever. But, when you play Salmon Run, this mode is going to randomly give you weapons. And so you got to get okay with everything, or at least know how to play them all. And so what I mean by that is if you have like a charger, if you have like a sniper, you shouldn't be getting in the thick of it, right? Like you shouldn't be like running out and facing enemies close up. So do you want to expand on that any, Tyson, or do you have any counterpoints to that?
I do feel like that's a really solid kind of overarching idea, and coming at it at a slightly different angle. I do, it's a very different mode. Like normal play is PvP, and so you're playing against human players on a set team, and then the switch to Salmon Run, the stages are laid out differently, and it's you against these computer controlled bosses. And I feel like it can potentially be easier to flip the switch and just think, well, I'm just kind of playing a single player mode.
Right.
And then just like run off to the edge of the stage and just try to kill things. And then you get overwhelmed immediately, because that's where every enemy is coming from, is from the farthest edge of the stage. And so just remembering like it still is a team sport, or, a team game, and to continue to keep an eye on your teammates and see how you can help them.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, playing with randoms versus playing with people you are able to voice chat with or know is different. And so I think if you're a new player, you're probably just queuing up with randoms. And so it's a little harder sometimes to know how to play your role in the team, But I think one of the things I try to do is like pay attention to what my teammates are doing. And that's maybe a little higher level than for beginners, but it's like, oh, nobody's putting eggs in the basket. I will focus on that. Or nobody's taking out fly fish. I will focus on doing that. Obviously, if my weapon leans towards one of those things, that's what I should probably be doing. But if my teammates aren't doing it, then I need to. That's sort of what my take on that is. And playing the stage too. All the stages are a little bit different. In some stages, I think you want to hang back In some stages, you want to go out a little more and stuff like that. And those are all things that you get a sense of as you play more. And so it's a little tricky to give that note, but I think it's maybe the big note, like you said, Tyson, this is a team effort. And even though you're going against enemies, you kind of need to coordinate. But I really think playing the weapon is a big one.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It just occurred to me too. I don't know if it's worth it to just give a little bit of preface in terms of like our experience with the mode. But I know for me, Splatoon 3 is my first game in the series. But I think probably most relevant to this discussion is that like I play almost exclusively freelance. So I'm pretty much only playing with random people. I do occasionally team up with like, Switch Headz. And I find, it's like, it's best to be able to chat with people if you're going to play on a team together. But for some reason, like my brain can't handle often like conversation in Salmon Run, like in that mode specifically. In Turf Wars, I can usually handle it. So I guess that's one reason why I tend to freelance. And it just lets me kind of drop out whenever I want without whatever, having to coordinate that with people. So I do feel like that's relevant. It can adjust your approach. And it certainly is, there might be some points that I make that are especially relevant for freelance that are maybe less so for if you're playing with friends. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I think this mode is, like you said, Tyson, very different than the other modes in Splatoon. So I think one of the things you're just gonna have to do is just be bad for a while, or just like try to have fun at the lower levels. I think and it's really getting familiar with how all the bosses move and work. One of the reasons I like it, and sometimes I like it more than the other modes, is because the enemies are predictable. They all, like there's a lot of them and you have to get used to the ways that they move and the ways that they attack. But once you do, it's like, like a good Metroidvania or something where you're almost like in this super state of flow because you just know their patterns and you can move and that. So it's really about getting to know all of the different boss salmonids and how they move and how they attack. And that just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always go back to, there's like a user manual when you walk into the Salmon Run lobby, like there's the statue of Mr. Grizz, and then to the right of the shop, the book is there, and you can replay any of the tutorials for the standard bosses there. So like, yeah, every boss has a weakness to exploit, and some of them are a little trickier than others, but knowing those weaknesses, like I still see lots of people like shooting at maws when they come up, and it's like, just throw a bomb. It's over so much fast. Like maws have so much health. So it's like, if you can just throw a bomb, even if it means waiting for them, if you don't have enough ink yet, like wait for them to like go down and then come up again a moment later and then just take care of it.
Yeah, I think in Splatoon 2, you couldn't replay the tutorial. And I remember and the Salmon Run was only every other day or whatever weirdness they did. And I had a real tough time like getting good at some of the bosses. So definitely if there's any that you're like a little on the fence about and you want to get better at this, go play the tutorial. Like just for that boss, because you can do it just for one boss. Like, and that's nice. Because we aren't going to maybe get into all of them when we might talk about one or two, but I think one of the tips that I think is really good is to get the one thing that's constant in Salmon Run is that you have splat bombs as your sub weapon, right? So you may have a different weapon, you may be on a different stage, you may have a different special because specials rotate as well, but you always have splat bombs. And so if you can get good with splat bombs, you can be good at this. And I actually think like 75% of the time or more, if you just sat there and did splat bombs the whole time, well, you would be fine. Like if you get a weapon that you're just like, I cannot play with this weapon, just do bombs. Like that's what I do. Like if I get a bamboozler or something, I'm going to be throwing a lot of bombs.
Yeah, for sure. Like the charger class. And I mean, even if you're good with chargers or splatlings, there are times where things suddenly get really thick in a spot that was previously safe a moment before. And you don't have time to sit there and charge because often when you're charging, you're moving a lot slower too. And there are a bunch of, lesser salmonid coming right at you. Like just toss a bomb and swim away and whatever of your ink is still left in the terrain and get out of there. And you'll usually take out a lot of them in the process.
I cannot overemphasize how important splat bombs are. I really feel like they are one of the major keys that made me get better at this mode. Because you can revive your teammates in Salmon Run, and you can revive them with a splat bomb, and you can have so much better distance with that, and it covers so much more area that you can often revive 2 or 3 people if they're not, even when they're a little bit far away.
And the nice thing about splat bombs is if you say you throw a splat bomb to revive your teammates, and let's say you're the only teammate left alive, and you throw a bomb. If you get splatted before the bomb goes off, the game will still wait until your bomb goes off. And if you revive people, you won't wipe out. So it's got an extra edge there too.
Something that we didn't put in the notes, that something you said just made me think of, that I think is another important tip. I think sometimes people come to this mode and they think, okay, in Turf War, I'm painting the ground, but in this mode, it's all about killing enemies. But I think this kind of comes back to that play your weapon thing. But inking the ground is pretty important in Salmon Run too, especially if your weapon is, again, the arrow spray or something. If you have something that just paints really well, then hey, maybe your job is to hang out at the base and keep it guarded and well painted so that there can be good movement. I think it frustrates me sometimes when I see new player, or when I'm playing at low ranks and people are not painting between rounds. Everybody's got to take a drink or go bathroom break sometimes, so I don't get mad about it every time. But if there's somebody who's consistently just standing there or spinning around or saying stuff, I'm like, paint the fucking ground. Right now's our chance. Between rounds, you can paint the ground, and that's really important.
See, I feel like I do that to my own detriment a lot of the time. I always whenever I start playing Salmon Run, I'll forget I'm playing Salmon Run and just play like I'm playing Turf War. So
I don't want to overemphasize it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I did for the people that might think the opposite, right? I just need to kill enemies. And I guess that ties in with this is true in, I think, Turf War more than maybe some of the other modes too. But it's staying alive is more important than getting kills in Turf War in some ways, or it can be, right? And I think that's true in Salmon Run too. Just staying, if you're in a tight spot, sometimes there are times where I sacrifice myself to take out an enemy in Salmon Run, but usually it's more important to stay alive, especially if you have time on the clock.
Yeah, I would say, it's not officially a Turf War, but it's good to still think of it as a Turf War. If at the end of a wave, a lot of the stage is your ink, that's also a win, because that's a lot less work you have to do at the start of the next wave to get ready for the next load of bosses.
Yeah, your chances are better.
Yeah, exactly. And you instantly have so much more mobility. I would also add that, in Turf Wars, it doesn't matter if you paint the walls. In Salmon Run, it matters so much that you paint the walls.
True.
Any wall that is paintable, you should be painting it. In fact, now when I play Turf Wars, I'm much more mindful of painting the walls just real quick, because I know it gives me so much better mobility to escape from a situation that turns sour, when I didn't expect it to. So definitely paint any wall that you can.
Yeah, I think that, even if you aren't interested in Salmon Run, but you like Splatoon 3, there are benefits like that, I think, of playing this mode and getting good at it, where you can then translate those skills into the other modes. Am now, I know how other people's weapons work. Whereas before I might be I don't know what they're doing or what weapon that is they're shooting at me with, but I know mostly. I don't know all the subs and specials because those aren't in Salmon Run. Sometimes when I'm what is this cloud of mist? But the ones that I am familiar with, I'm a lot better at. And I think something new players forget to do is use their specials in Salmon Run. I feel like
I do all the time.
Yeah, it's easy to forget.
Yeah, especially when you're new to it, because you're just so focused on taking out a boss or whatever. So I think the thing that you would emphasize to new players, use your special, even if it's early, even if it's, whatever, make sure that you use it before the end of wave 3, both of your specials. And then I think there's that sort of medium ground where people then, when you're playing in some of the lower or medium tiers, where you're why are you using your special on wave 1?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So that's a low level note, is make sure you use it at some point. And then the next, once you're always remembering to use it, then it's save it for the right situation. And again, different specials are really for different situations. You know, some are good for reviving, some are good for specific bosses, or some are good for when you're in different kinds of trouble. And it's probably beyond the scope to get into all of that. But it's like, use your special is the low level sort of advice, I think. Like,
yeah, and for the first for a regular 3-wave set, you've got 2 specials available to you. And so, I generally try to avoid using them the first wave if I can. That way I've got potentially 1 for the second wave, 1 for the third wave. But, and also might be worth noting that, if you get a king salmonid encounter, like an extra wave at the end, it doesn't matter if you saved your specials. You suddenly have 1 available. So, there's no point in trying to save them for after wave 3. Like, once wave 3 ends, that's it for those 2 specials, no matter what.
Yeah, and I think to that note of like making sure you're trying to save them for later, the flip of that is if it's wave 1 and we have a tough wave 1, I would much rather we use all our specials and give ourselves a chance at surviving than holding them and die, because then you never get to use them.
And sometimes wave 2 and 3 are much more relaxed than wave 1. Sometimes wave 1 is like glowflies in a really tough context, and then the second 2 are just kind of like, oh, these are not so bad.
Yeah. So I think we talked about, the clock a little bit, but I think that's another, new players maybe don't pay as much attention to the clock. Something I really try to pay attention to with specials is the clock, right? For that reason, like if I've thankfully gotten to wave 3 with both of my specials, I'm like, there's 30 seconds on the clock. I'm using 1 roughly at that time period. Right. And then again, 20, 15, somewhere in that range, I'm using my other one. That's just sort of my personal thing. I don't know if you do the same, Tyson, or not, but
yeah, I really like using the wave breaker like when there are 15 seconds left, because usually by then there are a ton of eggs near the basket, but things might be a little bit like there might be a lot of lesser salmonid kind of wandering around, getting in the way and distracting you from just throwing eggs in. So putting out a wave breaker will usually clear out a lot of those lessers, and if it's in the final 10 to 15 seconds, that wave breaker is going to last most of the last of that wave, and you can just toss in eggs so much more easily that way. It's always really satisfying.
Yeah. And that just, while we're talking about specials real quick, there are a limited amount of specials in Salmon Run, and it's random. It's not tied to the same weapons. On any run, you might get any different one, but getting used to the ones that are in Salmon Run is obviously helpful. And there are some that maybe people feel like aren't as useful as others, like the crab tank. But I think the more you play, the more you'll find uses for even the ones that don't feel as good. And they're more specific and more niche, but this crab tank can be great in certain situations.
Yeah, crab tank can be beastly.
In the right situation, it's like super key. But it's just kind of playing it more and getting used to that, I think. So I think we have this list of like priorities that I'd love to talk about, because I think the most important thing is getting eggs in the basket, because if you don't do that, you don't advance. There's a quota for how many eggs you have to get. And so that if we don't do that, we don't win. But obviously sacrificing ourselves to do that runs the risk of failing too. So staying alive and getting eggs in the basket, there's a tension there. And I think that's the sort of natural tension of this mode.
Hubris. The hubris of Salmon Run.
Yes.
Right.
Which happens. And I think we have, taking out the bosses as one. And I think there are certain boss salmonid. You play the mode enough, you'll start to know which ones that you really like. If a fly fish pops up, we got to take that out quick if we can. Like there are certain ones that are just going to wreak more havoc than others. And I feel like you tell me your list, but I would say it's fly fish, stingers, steelheads, and then maybe like big shots and drizzlers. And not necessarily in that order, but like, but more or less, I would say those are the ones that like you got to prioritize those guys.
Yeah, I would say I have a similar list. Fly fish, stingers, if there's more than 1 or 2. If there's 1 and you have other things to worry about, you can usually avoid 1 or 2. Sometimes 2 will like pincer you, a single player from across the map, and you're just done at that point.
The stingers are the snipers, right? The ones that
stingers are the snipers. Yeah, so fly fish just hang out at the farthest edge of the stage. Stingers will do that too. They don't chase after you. I would say fish sticks and drizzlers are two that I see a lot of players, especially in kind of like lower to mid game, ignore. And those two in particular can just like, getting back to the like that Salmon Run is also turf wars. Like they can just decimate your ink and they just keep dumping it kind of like limitlessly.
Yeah.
So taking them out is actually pretty important. And sometimes, yeah, you've got to worry about a fly fish or a steelhead who's going to throw a bomb at your team. You've got to do that first, but you really want to address those guys, fish sticks who, they'll drop their stick down and then just like spit ink until all of them are taken out. And then drizzlers will shoot a balloon that does, what is it? Ink storm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it just rains
Raining
ink
ink
down, which can take you out a single one of those.
I think part of the reason is that those two enemies at lower levels aren't as intimidating because at lower levels you have fewer enemies spawning, and so but at higher levels they do more damage, right? Is part of the problem. But I do think the reason I said drizzler and not fish stick, I think fish stick's really situational. If a fish stick lands near your base or like in an important corridor, you really do need to get rid of it. But drizzlers move around the map and make it rain constantly, and I think so. Like there's not a specific area, and that's why I included them. But yeah, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I'm not sure how useful it is in application all that much, but drizzlers will, mentioning that they move around, they actually will follow. They'll pick a player and follow them, but they have a really wide radius. So if you notice that they're shooting their balloons at you and you want to bring them closer to the basket so you can, I guess this is a little higher level technique. You can kind of lure them a little closer to the basket so it's easier to take them out and, drop their eggs in.
I think that's a great tip too for new players, that sometimes new players will run out to the edge of the map and just kill some of the easier enemies. And in particular, I'm thinking of like the scrappers and the steel eels, the ones that chase you. You can just bring them back to the base and kill them there, and it's so much easier.
Maws as well.
Yes, like letting some of the enemies chase you and not just killing them so that you can get them in better position is another, I think, good tip for new players. And then we just have on here of helping your teammates. I think that's like being aware of your teammates and when they're dying and when if they're not, if they have a tough weapon and there's an enemy they're trying to fight or something like that. Because some of the enemies really are weapon specific.
I find that it's easy in the chaos that inevitably unfolds that like, I definitely have times where I've like lost track of who's alive on my team, but there is that bit of UI in the top left corner that shows you, if any of those are X'd out, and there's usually like a little splash of like a little flash that goes off when someone is splatted. So just trying to be mindful of that and like glance up at the top left to see if there's anyone taken out and if you can see them, remotely nearby you to try to revive them. And the thing is too, sometimes you can see them and they're calling out help and you want to revive them, but it's actually not the right moment for you to revive them, would probably take you out. Sometimes you have to, what is that classic thing like when you're in a plane?
Help yourself.
Like putting on your air mask before the people around you or, your child or whatever. Like sometimes you've got to put your own air mask on first.
Totally.
Before you can help others out.
And also if you're dead, there are things you can do or not do that make it easier to kill you. Some people, when they're dead, just start spamming help and flipping and flapping all over the place. And
circling and jumping.
Yeah, and that makes it harder to revive you. Like there's a balance between moving when you're dead and just staying put. If you notice that somebody's trying to revive you, like they're shooting towards you, stop moving. Like I don't know.
I needed to hear
dropping.
That tip in particular for everything you guys. I'm always moving around. Everybody's just chasing after my ass, and then nothing ever happens.
It's really frustrating when I'm trying to revive somebody and they're hopping around, and I'm like, I would have revived you like 5 seconds ago if you had just stood still. And I kind of might do it too much because I'm kind of like, if I'm dead and there's people near me, I'm just going to sit still. And because I'm like, I know how frustrating that can be. But there is the balance of like, moving towards you definitely need to move towards people so they can heal you if you're far away.
My general tip for if you get splatted, especially if there's no one nearby to revive you, what I try to do is like, I'll try to swim through an egg so that I've got an egg I'm carrying in my little life raft, and then just get as close to the basket as possible because inevitably someone's going to come back to the basket and then they'll see you. So or they'll do it while you're making your way to the basket. So just grabbing an egg and just trying to get closer to your base is always a good tip.
And before we move on to, I think maybe a couple of the specific hard things, the one thing I think is very stage specific, but in general, I think it's really important to be aware of the base where the egg basket is and keeping that inked, or at least maybe having somebody there. There are times, especially in certain modes and stuff, where everybody's so far away from the base, and this kind of drives me nuts too, where like everybody's fighting a bunch of big shots and we're all firing tons of eggs back towards the base, but there's nobody at the base. And so the little snatcher people are just carrying them away, and we've made it almost impossible to get back to the base because there's just so many enemies between us and the base. And that's just one of the things, like, it's easier to do maybe if you have friends and you're coordinating than randoms. But also if you notice everybody's far away from the base and there's a big shot or just like their eggs being tossed, like, hey, I'll be the person that goes back and deals with that. There have been many.
That reminds me. One thing I was aware of myself doing a lot during Big Run, and this was like getting at the higher levels. Yeah, I almost got to 999, but I didn't quite get there. But one thing I was doing even in those higher stages, like, you know, there are moments where you can actually kind of get away from the action just a little bit and get a little bit of perspective and just look at what's going on, like a relatively safe spot. And it can just be a couple of seconds, but every once in a while I'll do that just to try to like take in, like, okay, what's going on? Where are the real, like, where are all the bosses getting clustered? Like, is there someone dead that can be revived? Like, what's actually going on, instead of just kind of, it's so easy once things start going in a wave to just like keep moving. And that can often work all right. But if you have a moment to just like take a step back, like in this case, like, okay, everyone is over by the big shots. No one's by the basket. I'm going to see, like, I have a good weapon for moving around quickly. I'm going to see if I can get my way back to the basket and put some of those eggs in before the snatchers take them all. So any moment you can take to like get a little bit of new perspective is going to be useful.
Well, I thought that we could maybe talk about four-ish of the big, I think, things that new players and even experienced players struggle with. If there's one we're missing here, or, you know, obviously I think Tyson and one thing I should probably say is I would love to talk about this more on the Discord if anybody wants to, or if you want to play with us. Sure. But we'll hit the big ones. I think flyfish. We've talked about flyfish. Flyfish are regular boss salmonid that have that are like the little guys, but there's one flying I don't know, what do you just like some sort of flying vehicle with two I am doing a
missile
very
boxes.
Poor job explanation. Yeah, but they have the missile, kind of like the missile special that Tenta missiles. And I think they're hard to take down for new players, even if you know how to do it. Again, it's get good with those splat bombs, because that's the easiest way to take them out. You can't shoot them down with a regular weapon. You have to throw splat bombs into their little tanks when they're open. And I think that's just a practice makes perfect thing with, you know, having good range on your splat bombs. I think it's easier for whatever reason to jump and throw splat bombs. I don't know why. I don't know if that's anybody else's experience. Just for some reason that just helps. I think something that people maybe don't realize too is when they open, or even if you get the timing right before they open, you can sometimes throw it. And you know, if you know your timing well, you can get 2 splat bombs into one flyfish in one go. It's a little bit of a higher level thing, but like, there's no reason to not try if it's early on to just ink the ground, refill your meter, and throw another bomb into the other one. That's the obvious way to take them out, but there's actually a lot of other ways to take out flyfish. It's very weapon specific and special specific. There are a couple of weapons that if you get them can actually just kill flyfish. The Explosher?
Yes, the Explosher.
However I say Explosher. But I could see Explosher.
You say Explosher, I say Explosher.
So if you ever have the Explosher, that's your job. Your job is to take out flyfish. And then if the Grizzco Slosher as well can do it.
Yes. It's so satisfying. The nice thing about the Grizzco Slosher, it has piercing, kind of like a fully charged charger shot. So you can just aim one shot into the cockpit and they're done. And you don't even have to wait for them to open their missile boxes. It's really pretty magical.
And then a lot of specials can take them out. And sometimes it's worth it if it's wave 2 or 3 and a fly fish pops up.
Especially if there are 2 or more like close together.
I almost all of the specials can take out. I mean, now there's some new ones, so maybe I should be careful on what I say. But like, obviously, the wave breaker can't, but a lot of the other ones can, and that's where that crab tank can come in useful too. A lot of people don't realize that crab tanks can take out fly fish. When you have a crab tank, you have the regular weapon, and then you have your second weapon in the crab tank,
the cannon,
and the cannon can actually take out fly fish. So it's a great use again if you're in that situation. They're really intimidating, but I think I kind of just make it my mission to kill them instantly. Like that, if a fly fish pops up on the map, I'm going for it.
Yeah, and the other thing I've learned over time, they absolutely are intimidating, and when you get targeted, it's even more so. But like I've found, if you're in an area where it's mostly your color ink, not salmonid ink, and you're targeted, like you can actually just walk, and you'll avoid getting hit by the missiles and getting taken out. So you don't actually have to move that fast. You just have to be in your color ink or in neutral territory, and you can outmaneuver them pretty easily.
That's a good point too. I think they're intimidating, but like you just have to stay moving when they're targeting you. And I think like there are many times a fly fish is targeting me and I'm up on top of a UFO, and I just carefully, like you said, just walk in a circle around it, and you'll be fine. So yeah, let's talk about the big one, which is glow flies. When I first started playing this mode, I hated glow flies. I didn't understand how it was possible. Now it's kind of my favorite. I kind of love playing glow flies.
It's pretty fun.
Glow flies is like a rush mode where they just come at you. And I think new players get scared and they spread out and they don't know what to do. So I think this is one where there is maybe a lot of tips that could help. I think the biggest tip is if your team, if your weapon set has a roller, you're golden. Like a roller beats glow flies. Like you have to do it right. And there are some rollers are better than others. The dynamo roller is like you win if you play right. But like some of the other rollers, you have to be a little bit more. I don't know what the word is because they bounce. But the way you beat glow flies with a roller is different on every stage. But on a lot of stages, there is a sort of higher place where you can have all of them coming up to you, and you put the roller in front with the roller just down. They're not moving at all, and everybody else is behind them and shooting. And if you do that and you're patient, you most likely can get through it.
Yeah, the nice thing about the roller is as long as you're just barely pressing forward, that'll count as a rolling attack. And it uses ink very slowly that way. So as long as you're doing that, the enemies will just run into it. And if it's a strong enough roller, which most of them are, it'll just take them out. And yeah, the goldies that are the only boss that show up in that scenario, they have more health. And it may depend. Those are the ones that'll maybe bounce you back if your roller is a little bit lower powered. And that's why you need at least one other teammate to also be there to back you up. The nice thing about the rollers too is even if you have it out, if you're not moving at all, you'll be recharging ink.
Yes.
So if there's a break in the swarm, you can leave your roller down to save yourself time, and you'll still be refilling the ink tank.
I think if you don't have a roller, what do you do against glow flies? It's almost kind of the same strategy. I think ideally it's just a little harder. And I think that's finding the right ground. It's different on different stages. We can't really get into that. But having a space where you can kind of force all of them to come up to you where you know they're coming from, and spacing yourselves out in a way so that you can take them out. And then also maybe having a place to dip out if necessary, which is, again, stage specific. There's sort of the classic early Splatoon 3 strategy of somebody sitting on a wall. And that works okay at lower levels. The main problem with that is that all the eggs are then in a place where there's tons of enemies. And so if you're that method can actually work really well when you mix it up with what we've already kind of described, if you go back and forth between those methods, which again works really well on some stages, because then you have that other area free to go send a person or two down to get the eggs into the basket. Once you kind of start seeing that, Glowflies isn't as intimidating, and you'll just get frustrated with your teammates who don't get to the right position because you're like, we could have won this. I have a roller, and you're over there on the low ground. It's high ground. It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would say, especially if you don't have a roller, I found this may just be a more like a higher level thing when the frequency, like the number of the swarm gets bigger and they come out faster, is that having maybe like two teammates at two different positions, so that they can, it has to be the right combination of weapons too, so that as someone gets picked, because it kind of rotates through which target is being chased after. You can half of your team gets a break when the other half is getting targeted, and then those two can work together to take out the swarm, and then the other two that have a break can put in as many eggs as possible, and then it switches back and forth.
Yeah.
So sometimes divide and conquer, as long as you're both within sight and you can revive each other if needed, that can work too.
We'll move on to maybe, unless there's anything else you have on Glowflies, we can talk about Grillers, which is another really frustrating mode for people. And I just want to say too, also Glowflies and Grillers are just hard.
Yeah, they're very punishing. If you mess up, you can get wiped kind of before anyone has a chance to revive anyone. They're just very instantaneous sometimes.
So even at high levels, you can lose if you make a mistake or if you just have a bad stage or whatever. But Grillers is very similar to Glowflies, I think. I think you're looking for high ground. You're looking for forcing the Grillers to go routes. I do think that, Tyson, I'd like to hear yours. I don't know that I have as many tips for this, but I guess because Grillers are sort of one enemy who targets you, or two, rather than a just ton, it can be beneficial to have somebody who they're targeting maybe move away for a minute and then pop back up so that you can get that Griller to go off the path that everybody else is on. I think that's maybe my biggest tip, is kind of like, if we're all in one place, whoever is being targeted needs to be really conscious of where the Grillers are and force them to move around so that everybody else can shoot it. And I think this is just a Salmon Run tip in general that I get frustrated with in this mode, Grillers more than others, is like people getting in the way of my gun. If we're all trying to shoot at a Griller, we need to space ourselves out, because your ink won't go through your teammate. And that happens a lot in Grillers more than any other mode. So space yourselves out in a tight area would be my advice on Grillers. I don't know. Do you have anything else to add on Grillers?
Yeah, I would say that whoever has a roller or a good inking weapon, you should maybe consider just being on small fry duty.
That's a good call.
The small fry will chase the Grillers around, and it's one of the most annoying things for me to get like instantly wiped out by like 4 small fry that all just like tap me with their little spoons at the same time, and I just explode like just like a one hit kill, almost like a Griller just ran me over. And if everyone's trying to ignore the small fry to focus on taking out the Griller or put eggs in the basket, then they can also wipe you out pretty quickly.
That's a good call. You need to be aware of those enemies too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if you're playing freelance, take a look around. You might see, oh, this person has the roller, not me, and they're not taking out the small fry. So I'm going to do it because I have an okay weapon to do it. So I'm just going to like suck it up and go for it and focus on those.
Well, the last thing that I wanted to make sure we talk about as the hard for new players, and then maybe we'll wrap it up, is Marooner's Bay. Marooner's Bay is one of the stages. We had some discussion in notes for this, for stuff we can't get to, where Tyson, I really found it fascinating, your rank of the stages, because I have mine slightly different. But I think we can all agree the Marooner's Bay is the hardest stage to play on. It's the big ship stage that has the fans that raise you up and down. So what makes Marooner's Bay difficult, among other things, is its size. I think that Marooner's Bay kind of inverts some of the difficulty of the different things. And so stuff that is easy on other stages can be more difficult on Marooner's Bay, and vice versa. Glowflies, I think it's the easiest stage for Glowflies. Again, you have to know what you're doing, but
right.
The the thing about Marooners Bay is it's just real big, and then those fans can cause problems. So I think it's the main tips are throwing eggs, which is good for every stage, but is just critical on this. There are many times where you kill a boss or a teammate kills a boss and they carry one egg back to the basket all the way. But instead, that person could throw one egg, grab another one, throw it, grab the last one, and kind of just create a pattern of throwing eggs, or at least two of them. It's really important on Marooners Bay to throw eggs. I think that's the biggest Marooners Bay tip, is that we all should be hurling eggs in the general direction of the basket.
Yeah, and I would say there are times in general, and especially Marooners Bay, where like you've got like two stingers who are sniping from the farthest corner of the stage. I personally think it's okay if you have a high mobility weapon to just go out there, take them out, grab one egg maybe if you can, but prioritize just making your way back. Because if you get taken out, one, you have to take them out because they're gonna take out your team eventually if you let them stay the whole wave. But if you get taken out there, it's like it's going to take 10, 15 seconds for you to get in range for someone to bring you back. And that's a long time to have just 3 players managing this large stage. So sometimes just like take out the faraway threat and then just get close to your team again. And don't worry as much about eggs. You're trying to ensure that you can make it through the wave.
That's good too.
But absolutely. Other than that, throwing eggs is key.
And you can throw eggs up on the side of the ship too. It's requires practice in getting your aim right. But another reason to get good at splat bombs is that also makes you better at throwing eggs and having better aim. And there are some like nice little places where you can throw eggs on Marooners Bay to kind of get them right up there.
Yeah, I was going to say this is definitely a stage where it's useful to take just a second or two if you have a moment to breathe, and just like, especially if you're up on the ship, like just try to take a look around and see what's coming, like where is everyone else, and try to decide what's the best thing I can do to get eggs close to the basket without going like really far away. I think the other thing about Marooners Bay too is that you kind of have to protect the whole ship. Like usually your basket is at the far front end of the ship, and so it's just like a big narrow corridor that, unless you're using the elevators, that you have to use to get to your basket again. So like steelheads are especially dangerous. Salmon lids, who are just like the UFOs that create a force field and just drop lesser salmonid constantly. Steel eel, those are all really dangerous ones to allow to like live on your ship for a while. They can really cause havoc. So trying to take them out. Prioritize trying to keep pathways along your ship clear.
Yeah, it was one of our general tips to kind of keep the base protected, but on Marooners Bay, you got to keep that.
It's a big base.
You kind of almost need somebody to be there almost the whole time, depending. But yeah, I think that's gonna cover it for our big tips. Obviously, there's more, and like if you want to hear more, you can come talk to us on the Discord. But you have some really good other resources here, Tyson, that I thought maybe you could just mention before we close out.
Yeah, sure. There's one thing I forgot to note that will just take a moment to explain. But one thing that's really helped me to get better. So at the end, whether you wipe or succeed your job, at the end, they give you some stats. And of course, the first of those, it has like 4 values. The first is how many eggs you put in. And then in parentheses is how many eggs you like assisted to get into the basket. Like you threw it, but you didn't actually put it in. And then the next one is like your total power egg count. So it basically represents like how many enemies you took down. And then the 2 after that, it's like how many times you revived teammates and then how many times you needed to be revived. And when I was getting frustrated with my seeming lack of progress, I would just choose one of those things to focus on getting better at. So if I wasn't putting a lot of eggs in there, I'd just focus on, I'm just going to try to stay closer to the base and get as many eggs in there as possible. If your score in any of those 4 categories is like noticeably lower than your teammates, it might be an area, especially if it's consistently lower, might be an area to focus on. I know one for me especially was like, I was getting splatted a lot and it was really frustrating. So after a while I thought, you know what? I'm not going to worry about anything other than just staying alive and trying to do like basic functioning for my team. And it's really started to make a difference. I feel like it's helped me break some bad habits about just like jumping in before thinking or like fully looking at a situation, which, I still mess up, but it's helped me get better. So just like a general approach if you're having trouble figuring out how to get better. But then also the great thing about Splatoon is that there's such a vibrant, active online scene. There are all sorts of great online resources. There are some Discords. There are many more Discords than I have listed here, but there's an SRS, so Salmon Run server Discord. Tons of excellent resources. Like they have maps with ideal locations for you and your team to locate for glowflies and griller, and like lots of videos and just tons of great resources, lots of people. It's a very active space. People who are willing to team up no matter your experience level. And also Squid School has their own Discord that has similar resources, and plenty of really great YouTube videos out there as well. So there's lots of great stuff out there, people who have lots of experience and want to help you get better. So just look around on the internet.
That really is the best thing about Splatoon, isn't it? I think like ultimately I've yet to find another online shooter with as least toxic a fan base as Splatoon. Everybody really just wants to help everybody out and have a good time. I love the Splatoon community.
Me included. If you want to play Salmon Run, come join the Switch Headz Discord and ping me, and I'll try to make it happen. So I think that's going to do it for our Salmon Run tips and tricks. If you're out there listening and there's either something you struggle with or something you are good at and we forgot to mention, definitely let us know. And with that, we'll take another short break and come back and talk about the games we've been playing recently. I don't have anything new to report. I've just been mostly I played some Big Run in Splatoon 3, not as much as I wanted. I only played a handful, so I don't yet have a good sense of Megalodontia, the new King Salmonid. Though it was fun to play on that stage. I love Big Run just because the mix up. And other than that, I've mostly been playing Minecraft with my kid, and I've talked about both of those things a lot. So I don't really have a lot to add on games playing, just mostly those for now.
Hell yeah. Well, I've got a few games, so that works for me. I've been playing a lot of like retro games recently. I've been kind of doing some throwbacks. I realized recently that a game that I've never actually played through to completion, at least, is the original Wario Land, Super Mario Land 2. And you know, I was like recently looking at, I've been wanting to play like Wario Land 4. I played a little bit of that game, but I was like, you know, I'm just going to like fucking go through this thing and play some of the old ones. I've been playing a lot on my retro handheld emulator. And so, I've been kind of just wanting to play a lot more Game Boy games, and this is one of them. So I played some of the original Wario Land. It's very good. It really like makes you realize like how it really is a sequel to Super Mario Land 2. Like a lot of the menus and the graphics and the characters are all similar and the same. And then obviously, you know, it branched off from the Mario series and started doing its own thing. But the original Wario Land really feels a lot like 6 Golden Coins. Great game. Staying with other things that I've been emulating on that thing. I randomly started, I had like a wild hair to install a Pokemon Mini emulator. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Pokemon Mini, but it was like a tiny little console. I've got a video of it here in the links, but it was like a tiny little console that played cartridges that were just like handheld LCD games of like little Pokemon mini games, basically. And so I have an emulator that plays these like horrible little LCD games on my on that same device. And I was just kind of fucking around with it just out of morbid curiosity, because I never actually owned one of these devices. And there's a bunch of really cool like YouTube videos about this console if you're interested in it. You know, it had like a little pedometer in it as well, like the Poke Walker did. And so it used like buttons and shaking and all this different kind of stuff. You can emulate that with like shoulder buttons and stuff like that on the emulator. But I've been having fun just kind of like going through some of these old Pokemon mini games and just seeing what they're all about. So that's been something I've been playing. A game that I've been looking forward to for a while just came out on the Switch and I think elsewhere. That's a Trip World DX. Kind of going with the Game Boy theme here. Trip World was a game that was released in Europe and Japan only back on the original Game Boy. And this game is being released by Limited Run Games. It's running on Carbon Engine, created by a friend of the show, MVG. And then this guy that I follow on Twitter, who does lots of like colorized Game Boy ROM hacks, like basically makes DX versions of Game Boy ROMs, like for like fan remakes, basically, was hired by Sunsoft to work on this re-release of this game for limited run games. And so this is one of a few like colorized Game Boy ROMs that are actually getting releases in the modern age. And so like, you know, this is a really short game. I bought this game at full price for $20. I would not recommend that. I would definitely say hold off. This is a very small, bite-sized Game Boy game. But I just like supporting stuff like this. You know, I think I've been playing colorized ROM hacks my whole life, and it's really nice to see, you know, Toru's, this guy who I've been following on Twitter for forever, actually like getting lots of gigs now where like he's getting paid to do these kinds of projects instead of it just being a fan project. So I always really enjoy seeing that. Yeah. And I just think that this game also is like really psychedelic and fun and cheerful and pretty. And I think works really well in color. So it's one definitely to check out. It's got lots of extras. It's got like interviews with the creator, like baked into the game, and a lot of like, key art and stuff like that, and a music video by some people. So it's definitely a fun little package. And then real quick, I'll wrap up my last two. I did play the F-Zero 99 classic race mode that was dropped the other day. I streamed that the other night. And I don't know that I love it. I mean, it's cool that it's in there for sure. It's a rotating like extra mode that goes along with like Grand Prix and special race and stuff like that. I kind of wish that it was just a mode you could play, you know, like play Grand Prix with it. You know, I think that would make a ton of sense. But it's not. It's single race only. And so because of that, it is a little underwhelming, I think, ultimately. You know, it's only 20 racers, and it's like, if you fuck up, like, you're not going to get any better than like 13th place. I think the highest I ranked was 8th, you know, without being able to boost whenever you want, only getting one boost per race. It really comes down to how well you can traverse the stage without touching anybody. You know what I mean? Which is fine, but it's also just kind of weird. I wish that they added more stuff like this that included the new mechanics that they added into the game, because that's kind of what makes it so fun. Or maybe they'll flesh this mode out into its own Grand Prix that you can play with friends, and then you kind of just got a version of F-Zero that plays much better in the year of our Lord 2023, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I enjoyed it. It's definitely worth trying out. And I really hope we get some more people. Also, shout out to I think it was Rival Seeker, a guy who found me on Twitch, and we ended up playing together. And he beat me, but I did beat a Grand Prix. So anyway, last thing I'll say is I've been playing a lot of the Binding of Isaac online beta. Another old game that I've put thousands of hours into is the Binding of Isaac Rebirth, Afterbirth, and Repentance. Those are the DLCs that came out. And this game just recently, kind of randomly, they've been building in an online mode into it, finally, so many years after it originally came out. And that's in beta right now. So I've been playing that a lot on my Steam Deck. I bought it on Steam, that Repentance DLC, because you need the DLC in order to play it. And boy, howdy, is it fun. It is massively fun. This is the game that I put down for so long because I put so many hours into it and I was like over it. So it's really nice to actually like sink my teeth into Binding of Isaac again in a way that feels really fresh. You know, it's got like matchmaking with randos, so that's kind of the most fun you can have with this, I think. Actually, it's just playing with random people. It makes it really fast and chaotic, and everybody's just going balls to the wall. But then you can also play with your friends, and so, you know, I played with my friend Rob. I played with him on stream, and then I've been playing with my friend Andrew as well, who I haven't seen in forever. And we used to play Binding of Isaac in person when we would hang out, but we've lived in different states, so it's nice to finally be able to play this game online. But yeah, so that's really great. I'm looking forward to playing more of that, and that's what I've been playing. Ty, what about you? What have you been playing this past week?
Yeah, so unlike Patrick, I was able to play a lot of Big Run in Splatoon 3 this past weekend. Played a lot of Megalodontia. I really kind of prefer Joe, which I guess is his name in Japan. I guess it stands for like jaw. Or, I think it just stands, it means the word jaw or something. It's like a very simple name.
Yeah.
A lot easier for me to remember how to say. Anyway, very fun boss. It's got a weak spot, a great big weak spot, and it cycles through teammates to target. Very big, very intimidating. It can also eat other bosses. It's pretty fun. Nice addition to the game. And Big Run was a lot of fun. They made some small changes. I won't get into the details because it's whatever. But good changes, I thought. So that was Splatoon 3. Been playing a lot of that. Also tried out Panzer Paladin, which I think it's only been out for like a year or two. It's a fun, it's like an 16-bit somewhere in there styled game. It's like a side-scrolling action game. You play an android who rides in a big mech that has a sword and a shield. And it's kind of like Mega Man style. You can select what stage, but there's no elemental thing that, an ideal order to go in. You can just choose which stage you like. So you're fighting monsters, you're collecting weapons. An interesting dynamic that they have is that every weapon has a limit to its durability, and it'll eventually break. And if you break it manually, it'll give you a temporary stat buff for that stage. So it has a little bit of like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, kind of like that nice variability of like cycling through weapons. And there are tons of weapons, so you're never like without a weapon. And it has a fun element from like the old 2D, top-down Zelda games where your shield is always out, but you can duck to lower your shield. And so enemies will try to hit you above or below. So there are a lot of interesting elements there. The bosses are good. The graphics are great. The music's solid. There are some like long stretches with bottomless pits in them between, like a several minutes of gameplay between checkpoints with bottomless pits. So if you like mess up, you have to replay a whole section that was going pretty easily until that point. But I guess, it's an old school design thing. So I can't really fault them for sure. And then the other game I've been playing, so I finished Mario Wonder, and it was great, but I feel like it ended a little bit sooner than I was expecting. And then Black Friday deals came along, and finally Tropical Freeze went on sale for $30. So I'm like, I'm going to go for it. I'm finally going to play Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. So I've only played for like 30 minutes or so. And man, it really feels different than Mario Wonder. So I'm still shifting my brain. And also it's kind of like the first stage is easy. And then after that, it's kind of like you can die pretty easily. So it's like, it's a big mental shift for Mario Wonder, but it looks great. The stages are really nice, interactive. The music's great. The animation is great. Though I think the one thing that I'm really bummed about is like in these newer Donkey Kong games, you can't actually play as Diddy or Dixie. They just ride on Donkey Kong's back. So I'm a little sad about that. But, when it's considered one of the greatest, like 2D platformers of all time, I can give it some leeway, I guess. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
You're talking to two big fans of that game.
Yeah, right.
And it's so funny you say that, but I'm like, no, you can play as those characters, but I guess that's just in the 2-player mode, which I played quite a bit of.
Okay.
So I'm wrong about that, but like, just love.
Yeah. And I think it's nice to just have Donkey Kong with a living backpack that lets you do amazing things. Like I'm okay with that. I love my main man Donkey Kong.
Otherwise,
it's retribution. It's retribution from like not being playable in Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. I think.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, man, they gotta put out another Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
With this theme park, right?
Yeah, you gotta think it's time, right? Like, I mean, it's been a long time since Tropical Freeze came out. It's been, it's like over a decade now, like since the original came out on the Wii U, right? So it's definitely time.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thanks, Tyson, again, for coming on and talking to us about Salmon Run.
Oh, yeah, so much fun.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. If you're looking for me, Patrick, you can find me most places online as PDYX.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Ty? Where can people find you online?
Well, I'm on the Switch Headz Discord as Ty Typos. And then on Twitter and Instagram, I'm there as Tyson Pease, TysonPease. I'm also at TysonPease.com. I've got a portfolio of my work.
That's right. Check out his work. Amazing artist right here, Tyson Pease. We love having you on the show. Thank you once again. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We have a website too. It's switchheadz.com. And then if you'd like to join our Discord or our Facebook group, you can join both of those at the links in the description of the show, whether you find it on Apple, Spotify, which, by the way, shout out to everyone on the end of year Spotify Wrapped playlists, by the way. We like seeing those. Appreciate that, everybody. Or on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Shoot us up, subscribe over there. Watch the video version of the show. We put a lot of work into it. And like and subscribe and share with all your friends. Get that shit out there so we can grow the show and get in front of more people. That's going to do it for this episode on Salmon Run, the game by Nintendo. We're going to be back next week with an all-new episode. We'll be doing our reaction to the Game Awards. Let's just call a spade a spade. That's what we're going to be doing next week. It's going to be a fun one, so make sure you tune in for that. You won't want to miss it. But in the meantime, gang, you know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Listen to these tips. Become a professional. But otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. Love you very much. Bye-bye.